No, start?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to speak slowly. I always forget because English is my first language and it sometimes comes out quickly. And I'll try also to speak English that you learn in high school, right? Nice. Okay. So Israel now is in the midst of a terrible, terrible crisis. Okay. Israel's in the midst of a terrible, terrible crisis now. The crisis is, without any doubt, the worst crisis of our lives. I'm speaking about people like us who were born after the Holocaust. It's the worst crisis in life. There's no question about it. And the crisis is so severe that I would even say that it's at the level of being incredible. Like, you can't really believe that this is happening. That's how serious the crisis is. And I'll try to give it to you very, very briefly. It's been going on now for more than 2 years. The war is a year and a half, but the crisis starts before the war. And I'll try to describe it very, very briefly. Then maybe you'll ask questions and I'll tell you things that you want to know in particular. But I'll start with the beginning of the crisis. And in November of 2022, there were elections in Israel. And Netanyahu, the Likud party, won the elections, and Netanyahu became prime minister again. He's been prime minister for a very long time. He was not prime minister for a year and a half. There was another government for a year and a half. And then he was in the opposition. And then we had the elections in November 22, and he returned to power. Immediately after returning to power, his Minister of Justice appeared on television and made a speech in which he told us that he wants to make a reform in the justice system of Israel. And he gave on television all the stages of the reform. I think you'll find it boring if I give you the details of the reform, although it's very, very important. But I'll just give you the spirit of the reform. The spirit of the reform was to take away the authority of the High Court. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. It's very, very important. Now, in Israel, this is a very, very serious matter. Even at that point, we were already saying this is the biggest crisis in life, and the war hasn't even started yet. Now the crisis is so much worse. But what is the crisis of this reform? Well, in a democracy, you have a balance of power. You have the executive, which is the government. Then you have the legislative, which is the parliament, the Knesset. And then you have the justice. And these three powers have a balance that nobody has absolute authority. So there's no dictatorship. Now in Israel, the government and the Knesset, it's the same, right? The government is made from the Knesset. It's the same. The only balance we have is the High Court. And that was the point of the reform. We're going to take away the power of the High Court, which means, for us, the people who were demonstrating in the streets now for 2.5 years, for us, this was clear. We're talking about dictatorship of Netanyahu. What was the motivation for this? It's important to understand the motivation. The Netanyahu was able to make a government with no moderate parties. No party from the left, like, for instance, the Labour Party. and no party from the center. Rather, he was able to make a government, a coalition of the Likud party, his right-wing party, plus all the religious people, all the religious parties. So the Likud got 32 seats in the Knesset, and the three religious parties together also got 32. Together, 64, that's a majority. And they decided, a nice accident. We're in power without any moderate people. We're going to make this reform of the government. And so people like me, whatever, kibbutz people or people who are not religious, people who, say, finished university, people like that, we're in the streets, demonstrating sometimes 250,000 people in a night, demonstrating in Tel Aviv against the reform.
One question. The High Court is just a justice, a court, so. Also
Bundesgerichtshof.
Okay.
Ja, ein Gericht, es ist nur ein Gericht, aber es gibt keine Verfassung, oder? In Deutschland, wir haben Gesetze und wir haben ein Grundgesetz, was nochmal eine eigene Qualität hat, was auch mit einer größeren Mehrheit von 2/3 zu ändern ist. Und dieses Grundgesetz, das gibt es, glaube ich, in Israel nicht. Und es gibt aber einen obersten Gerichtshof, der quasi die Funktion hat, die demokratische Basis zu gewährleisten. Ist das richtig, das Verständnis?
So,
Ja, ist genau das, was er. Aber er führt es ja jetzt aus. Ist genau richtig. Ist genau richtig.
Deswegen ist es
so I want to say why the High Court was their target. Why was this the target? Because the High Court in Israel has the right to say that this decision of the government is illegal,
Yes.
and it can't be done. Or this decision of the government is illogical. It can't be done. And so they wanted to end that. And indeed, they passed a law, the coalition passed a law saying that the High Court has no right to say that a decision of the government is unreasonable. You know the word unreasonable in English? Unreasonable. And so, and of course for us, the people demonstrating, we ask ourselves, but why would they want to make a law saying that we can't criticize an unreasonable decision? Because they're planning on making unreasonable decisions. That was obvious. That's what the plan is. And it's and they had they have lots of ideas of what they want to do now that are all unreasonable. But so anyway, we're in the streets and we're demonstrating now this was starting in January 23, and this is going on until October. There was supposed to be a demonstration October 7th, but because of the war, it was canceled. So from January to October, 9 whole months, we were demonstrating in the streets. And the situation got so bad that there were pilots in our Air Force, piloten, pilots in our Air Force. See, in Israel, I'm certain you know these things, but make sure everybody understands. In Israel, the boys serve in the army for 3 years. The girls 2 years, but the boys serve in the army for 3 years. And then when they finish the army, they go back to the army for 1 month every year until I did it until I was 49. So the army is the power of our army is based on the reserve. And so there are soldiers who serve in the reserve, but they don't have to anymore. They're too old. And a lot of them are pilots. And a lot of these pilots said that if the government makes this reform, we are going to stop volunteering for reserve duty. And this was a big crisis, a lot of anger in the country, but they made these threats. And the fight in Israel was very, very, very big, and the army was warning the government to stop the reform because they feel that this is encouraging the Arabs to start a war with us. And they warned the prime minister 4 times. 4 times they sent him a secret letter telling him that he has to stop it. The reform movement is dangerous for the security of Israel. Netanyahu didn't take these things seriously. He thought it was all part of the left was trying to undermine his government, whatever. He didn't take it seriously. So anyway, I'll leave the reform for the time being, but the reform is the beginning of the crisis. And I didn't give you the motivation for it, but maybe if you have questions, I'll tell you what the motivation was for the reform.
Another question, the reform is already working?
They've passed now just one law. But what happens, they passed a law in the past about unreasonable. They passed such a law, and that went to the High Court, and the High Court said, no, the law is illegal.
Because it's the right of the High Court.
And now they made a new one. They made a new law, which is also going to go to the High Court, and I think also it's going to be canceled. So there's a fight now between the government and the High Court, because the government is always making these proposals which are unreasonable, insanity. Okay, so
ask a question. What about the Knesset?
Yeah. So the Knesset, this is Netanyahu's power. What I'm talking about his success, Netanyahu's success from his point of view. For me, it's not success. For me, this is disaster. But from Netanyahu's point of view, his success as prime minister, he's been prime minister now for I don't know how many years. Let's say 2009, and now we're talking about he's in power for maybe 15 years. And what has he succeeded in doing in 15 years? He succeeded in making a situation that his coalition in the Knesset are all yes men. You know what yes men are? Okay, you know what yes men. So for instance, when he wants to pass a law in the Knesset, the entire coalition votes yes. There's never one. We say in Hebrew, there's never one righteous man in Sodom. There's never one righteous one. There's not one righteous person in Sodom who says, "Excuse me, Mr. Netanyahu, but I don't think this is a good law." No one says that. The same thing is true for his government. His government makes a decision. All the ministers sit around on this big table, and they make a decision. It's time to vote on it. I say pe'echad. It's unanimous. Everybody raises his hand. Yes. So that's his power. That's his success from his point of view. He has a situation in which he has control of the Knesset, control of his government. What's missing? The High Court. That's missing, and that was the focus of his reform. Okay, now I want to get to the 7th of October. On the 7th of October, 2023, there was a big surprise attack against Israel. Total surprise. The indication that there might be trouble was at 3 o'clock in the morning before the event. It wasn't even time to get organized. And 1,200 people were murdered in one day, the October 7th, on the October 7th. A big disaster. The army was caught by surprise. The government was caught by surprise. And the war started. During this attack, they killed 1,200 people. 251 were taken as hostages. You understand the word hostages? I once knew the word in German, but I've forgotten. Yeah, guys. Yeah. And they were taken hostages, and the war started. Now the government, now I'm going to start my criticism. I have a lot of criticism, but maybe this first important point that I want to bring up to you. The government, when they informed the public that we're at war now, they told us that the purpose of the war is to destroy Hamas, number one, and to free the hostages. Now, you have to understand, this is an absurdity, okay? An absurdity, because the people who were protesting against the reform, they all understood that this is absurd. If you destroy Hamas, who is going to return our hostages? It's just totally crazy, totally crazy. And but the people who support Netanyahu, nobody says, Mr. Netanyahu, I don't understand how this is possible. Nobody, they just go for it. And so there was this terrible war. We attacked Gaza very, very severely. I'm certain you saw on television how serious the attack was. Many people in Gaza were killed. Also, many of our soldiers were killed. And but the war didn't bring about the release of hostages. It's impossible to rescue the hostages. The hostages were being kept in tunnels underneath the city, underneath Gaza, underneath Han Yunis, underneath Rafah, underneath all these places. And if our army would approach one of these tunnels, the guards just kill the hostages. And it's happened. It happened on more than one occasion. But the government was very, very firm about this. Now I have to bring to your attention, the nature of our government. Our government, as I told you, half of the members of the coalition are religious Jews, but from 3 different parties. And the 3 different parties have a different motivation in the reform and now also in the war. So we have the one party of ultra-Orthodox, you understand the term? Ultra-Orthodox, whatever. But Jews who are Ashkenazi Jews. In other words, they came from Eastern Europe, Germany, Eastern Europe. And and they are in this coalition with Netanyahu, not because they want to improve our democracy. All the time they want to improve our democracy. So they're not in the coalition to improve the democracy, but they're in the coalition because they want to be able to put pressure on Netanyahu that their boys don't have to serve in the army, and that the government continues supporting the religious community, giving them money to live on, right? They don't go to the army, they don't go to work, they get money from the government, and they don't serve in the army, and they want to put pressure on Netanyahu. If Netanyahu doesn't allow for this system to continue, they'll make his government fall. So then you have the Jews who are ultra-Orthodox Jews, but they're from North Africa, Moroccan Jews or Tunisian Jews. And they're in the coalition, not because they want to improve democracy, but they're in the coalition for reasons of corruption. They want the government to appoint many rabbis. Every neighborhood gets a rabbi, so they all get salaries. And that's why they support the government.
Which party?
That's Shas. That party is called Shas. So the party that was fighting that their boys don't serve in the army, that's called Agudat Yisrael. Well, they say Agudas, right? Agudas is Ashkenazi pronunciation. Agudat Yisrael. And the third religious party, they call themselves Religious Zionism. And these people want to claim the entire land of Israel, from the Jordan River to the sea, all of it for the Jews. And they are against the Supreme Court. They're against the High Court, because the High Court all the time tells them that this is illegal and this is illegal, you can't do this and you can't do that. And they want to end the High Court in order to be able to do what they want to do. For instance, now, I don't know if this comes in the news in Germany, but you know what a pogrom is?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So these people, they do pogroms now against Arab villages, and nobody touches these people because the representatives are in the government, and so that's their point of view. Now, I want to get back to the war. It's so hard. It's so strange what I'm going to tell you now. I'm always afraid that I'll tell the story and you won't believe me that this is so. As a way that I say, we ourselves don't believe that this is happening. Okay, the war was 100% total surprise. But once the war started, the religious Zionist people saw this war as an opportunity, as good news. People are dying, but they see it as good news. And what it is, in the Talmudic, in the Talmud, there's so many things are being said, but there are a number of stories in the Talmud which they take as being relevant today. And yeah, and so in the Talmudic thinking, before the Messiah comes, Messias, right? Before the Messiah comes, there has to be this terrible war beforehand. It's called the War of Gog and Magog, right? It's a very strange name, but it appears in the book of Ezekiel in the Bible. In German, Ezekiel is Ezekiel. Okay. So in the book of Ezekiel, you can see the words Gog and Magog. And so there's will be this terrible war. And when the war is finished of Gog and Magog, then the Messiah will come. And it's okay, for me, okay, I studied the Talmud in the university. I know the story. But for these people, this is a serious matter. And so they see the war as a positive phenomenon. And they threaten Netanyahu that if the war comes to an end, they will topple the government. They will make the government fall. Now, why is this terrible for them that the war ends? Because if the war ends, then the program ends. The program is to bring the Messiah. And so this is a big problem. So I'm certain you know these names from the news. Ben Gvir, he's one of them. And Bezalel Smotrich, the Minister of Finance, he's also one of these people who keep Netanyahu under pressure. I'm not saying that Netanyahu is a good guy. He's not a good guy at all. He's a very, very bad person. But here he is performing as a terrible prime minister. He doesn't have the interest of the state of Israel in front of his eyes. He has in front of his eyes that his government shouldn't fall. That's the most important thing in the world. And that's why he's a terrible, terrible prime minister, because his job as prime minister is to serve the interests of the state of Israel. And the interest of the state of Israel is always in second place. In first place is his government shouldn't fall. So now I'll tell you some sad stories. Make it hard for you to fall asleep at nighttime. And a week after the war started, on the 15th of October, 2023, Hamas contacted Netanyahu and told him that Hamas wants to release the children. They kidnapped children. A 9-month-old baby, for instance, was in captivity. They're going to release the children and their mothers, not the fathers, but the mothers and the little children, and the old women. There were lots of old women from the kibbutzim who were also in captivity. Now, this was proposed to Netanyahu on the 15th of October. He kept it to himself until the 8th of November. Only on the 8th of November did it become known to his government that there was such a proposal. For 3 weeks, he didn't say a word about it. It's so strange. It's so strange. Like, what was his calculation? Why wouldn't he say, yes, I'll take the children, I'll take the old ladies? Why not? He didn't want to, because he knew that his partners in the government would make his government fall if he would dare end the war. Finally, After negotiations for a little while, maybe 2 weeks of negotiations, they came to an agreement. Hamas and the government came to agreement. The Hamas would release 10 hostages, the old ladies, young mothers, and the little children, 10 every day for a week ceasefire. For Hamas, it was very important to have a ceasefire. Everybody understand ceasefire? Yeah, so ceasefire, for a week of ceasefire. So anyway, they released 10, another 10, and another 10. It was very, very exciting times. Everybody had tears in their eyes when they see these little children coming back to Israel. On the 7th day, Hamas made a request that there be some more days of ceasefire. Some more days of ceasefire, and they released 10 more, and 10 more, and 10 more every day of ceasefire. But then Hamas told us that there are no more old women, young mothers, and little children. It's finished. So instead of that, we'll release 10 old men. Now, it's hard for me to pass over to my anger and my emotions, but I'll do the best I can. Why not? Why not? What is the problem of saying, yes, I'll take back 10 old men every day and continue the ceasefire for another day, another 10 men, another 10 men. Unbelievably, it's almost impossible to take this in. Netanyahu said no. The agreement was old women and children, and he said no. And it was like, then in those days we were still a bit naive, didn't understand what was happening in Israel. It wasn't our state of Israel anymore. It was such a strange country with a strange government. But it became clear. To finish the point, it became clear though that if he agreed to the Smotrich and Ben Gvir threatened him. No, if you continue the ceasefire, we're going to topple your government. And for Netanyahu, that was enough to let them stay in captivity. Meanwhile, all those old men were died in captivity.
But Israel had to release hundreds
Okay.
of Palestinians out of their...
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's part of it. Yeah. It's part of it. And
every time.
Yeah, but and perhaps that's it's good you brought it up because I want to introduce a term that's very, very important to me, to most Israelis, and that's a term called solidarity. Always in the past, we released Palestinian prisoners. These are criminals, the Palestinians. So these are not little children being kidnapped from their beds. But we always agreed to release Palestinian refugees, Palestinian prisoners from jail in exchange for our people. Yeah. And this was our solidarity. This is part of our being Jewish. We take care of our people. And now in Israel, we have a government which is attacking our identity. That's how I put it. Our identity of a people that has real solidarity, and we had until this government real solidarity, and suddenly there's no solidarity. Suddenly there's something more important than helping our captive people. What's more important? That I'm prime minister. That's more important. So anyway, I'm glad you brought it up. And he said no to this, and it was like everybody was like, why not? Why? What do you care if they're 10 old men and not 10 old women? What do you care? They're our people. Let's get them back. But he refused, and everybody stayed in captivity for a long time, more than a year. They stayed in captivity. The people who might have been released, they stayed in captivity. And the old men, almost all of them died. There's just one who survived. He's been returned. His name is Gadi Moses. He returned, but all the other old men died in captivity or murdered in captivity. And now I want to go fast forward and bring you to May of 2024. Say a half a year after the war started, maybe a bit less. And the president in America was still Mr. Biden, as you remember. And he was very critical of Netanyahu, put a lot of pressure on Netanyahu. I want a plan. So Netanyahu made a plan for the American president. And what was the plan? The plan was that Israel will leave Gaza, take away our army, the war will come to an end, and they release all of our hostages. And of course, we release also prisoners from prison, the Palestinian prisoners from prison. But that was the deal. Again, leave Gaza, end of war, hostages returned. That was the deal. Netanyahu made this proposal to the American president. He didn't talk about it in his government. It wasn't talked about on television, on the radio. No. But this was his proposal. The American president lost patience with him. And the American president on American television told the American public, this is Netanyahu's plan. He put Netanyahu on the spot. That here, this is your plan. And we want to go for your plan. So Netanyahu made this plan, and of course I have to add my insight, and that is that Netanyahu didn't really think that Hamas would accept this plan. Now for Netanyahu, this is perfect. This is perfect. I make a proposal, they say no, I'm the good guy. They're the bad guys, right?
But who should govern Gaza after the war?
Oh,
this was not part of his plan. I never heard about it.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I'm glad you brought this up because you're helping me make my little speech here, because there's lots of things happening and it's hard to think of them all. But if I don't get back to it, you remind me of what's going to be. It's called in Hebrew the day after. What's going to be the day after? Okay, so now, but I want to deal with this plan. He made this plan, and as I told you, apparently, Netanyahu is not my friend, so I don't know what he's really thinking. He doesn't talk to me. But my assumption is that he wanted them to say no. And here came the surprise. They said yes. They said yes. And so it seems like, wow, who could ask for more? We have a plan to end the war, get the hostages back. But Netanyahu knew that he can't go for this plan. Even though it's his plan, he can't go for this plan. Why? Because his government will fall. Ending the war means for Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, it means for them the end of their big plan of conquering Gaza, getting rid of the Arabs, the Messiah comes and whatever. They had their big plans. And so he couldn't go for the deal. So what did Netanyahu do? He made an additional condition. He said, well, no, we can't leave a road, which we call in Israel, we call it the Philadelphia Road. Yeah. We can't leave the Philadelphia, along the border with Egypt. We can't leave the Philadelphia Road. And that he knew, of course, Hamas would not accept, and they rejected it. And so it looked like Netanyahu is responsible for breaking this possible deal. And he was responsible for breaking this possible deal. But Netanyahu has to face the Israeli public. The Israeli public wants the hostages released. That's the most important thing on the agenda of the Jewish people, to get our people back. And he has to now explain to the Israeli public why he broke the deal, or why he wants to convince us he didn't really break the deal. It's something more important. So what did Netanyahu do? He leaked, you know the word to leak? To leak information? Everybody knows that word? Okay, so he leaked 2 pieces of information, one to a Jewish newspaper in London, it's called the Jewish Chronicle, and one to a German newspaper, Bild. Der Bild, das Bild? Bild. Okay. So he released. Now the document that he released for the Jewish Chronicle in London was invented. There was no such real document. He claimed it was a real document that we captured in Gaza from the Hamas organization, but it was invented. What did the Jewish Chronicle publish? The Jewish Chronicle, they fell into his trap, and they published this forgery of Netanyahu. he told the Jewish Chronicle that we have information, we have a document from the Palestinians, from the Hamas, that they plan on taking the hostages across the Philadelphia road into Sinai, and from there to bring them to Iran, and we'll never see them again. So he's like telling the Israeli public, my being stubborn about the Philadelphia road, it's because that's our interest. But it was a lie. There was no such document, and there was no such intention. The Hamas wants our people in their hands to protect themselves, not to send them away. But that was the one thing. Now with the Bild in Germany, they sent them a real document, but it was tampered. Can you say that in German?
Veraltet.
Nein, es war geändert, zum Teil geändert.
Manipuliert.
Abgeändert.
It was manipulated. Oh, that's a good synonym. It was manipulated. Okay. So what it was, what was the real document? Our army is fighting Hamas, and in fighting Hamas, we come across a computer used by Hamas, and there you can see the correspondence between the different people in Hamas. So there was an activist in the Hamas organization who wrote a proposal to Sinwar. You know, Sinwar was the leader of Hamas. He was killed meanwhile. But anyway, this person wrote a letter to Hamas, to Sinwar, telling Sinwar that it's good to keep the hostages, not to release them, because it drives Israel crazy. Okay? So what did Netanyahu do? He took this document and he tampered it. He manipulated it, saying that this is a letter written by Sinwar. Now, Sinwar has no intention of releasing the hostages. So this way he was able to manipulate the public opinion in Israel, that he made this condition about the Philadelphia because that's the interest of the hostages. And in any case, Hamas has no intention of releasing the hostages. So it's a lot. He forged a document and he released a document in order to manipulate Israeli public opinion, which is against the law. And that's what he did. And so it was his way of avoiding the accusation that he is the one who disrupted or ended the possibility of a deal. So these people weren't released in May, and they were in captivity until February. Another 10 months in captivity. Now, what happened in February? President Trump, Mr. Trump became president, and when he became president, boom, 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 a lot of crazy things he says. But one thing that he said, which was for the end positive for us, he said, "I want the hostages released." So he put Netanyahu in a position where Netanyahu had to agree. So they made an agreement under the auspices of the Americans. They made an agreement in February. And this is the agreement. It's in three parts. Part A, Part B, and Part C. So what was Part A? Part A was they're going to release 3 hostages every Saturday for 7 weeks. It was making us all nervous, waiting for the next Saturday to see who they're going to release. Who they're going to release? They're going to release all the females. Not just old ladies, whatever, but all the females. The ones who are not young mothers, the ones who were, I say ravokot, they were ones who weren't married, that they didn't have children, but they were released. The soldiers, the female soldiers were released. And the old men who were left, there's only one, old men and wounded to be released. Three every Saturday for 7 weeks. And so all the girls came back, all the girl soldiers came back. That was really nice. And and the agreement was that on the 16th day, right, on the 16th day of the agreement, after they start, there's going to be negotiations for the B part of the agreement. And what was B? B was that the Hamas release all the rest of the hostages. Israel leaves the Gaza Strip, and the end of the war. There was the agreement that was agreed upon in May was now supposed to be Part B. And what's Part C? Part C was to return all the dead bodies, all the hostages who were killed after being captured, and to return their bodies. That was A, B, and C. And we finished A. We finished A, 3 every week for 7 weeks. But on the 16th day of the agreement, Netanyahu did not start negotiations for Part B. He didn't do it. And it was very suspicious, very strange. Why not? You agreed. This was the agreement. You agreed. But suddenly he's not doing it. And when Part A was finished, the 20-some people came back, he went back to war. Now, let me try to explain to you how awful, how terrible this is. Let's say, just for argument's sake, that Netanyahu is right. He's not right, but let's say he's right. We should return to war against Hamas. We have to kill them. We have to whatever. We have to destroy their political power, whatever, their military party. Let's say that he's right. And again, I say he's not right, but let's say that he's right. Why on God's green earth do you break the agreement before Part B? Why don't you do it after Part B? Get back, there's another 24 men in captivity, alive, I mean the ones who are alive. Another 24 living men in captivity, starving to death. Some of them are in chains. Some of them are in cages. They cuffs. And why don't you break the contract after Part B? Why Part A? And it's mystifying, and perhaps for outsiders it's hard to understand this. But what is the reason? I'll give you the reason. In March, last month, by the end of March 2025, the government has to pass in the parliament, in the Knesset, the government has to pass the state budget. If the state budget doesn't pass, the government has to resign, and there's new elections. What's the most important thing in the world? That Netanyahu is prime minister. That's the most important thing in the world in his eyes. And so this Smotrich and Ben Gvir made it clear to him that if he goes for stage B, for Part B, ends the war, then they will not vote for the state budget. So Netanyahu broke the contract. And we're talking about a tremendous tragedy. Now I want to go to your question, which was very good. I didn't think about it ahead of time that I would talk about it. But the question here was, what about the day after? All the time Netanyahu is saying to us that we have to end the rule of Hamas in Gaza. Okay, that is a perfectly normal political aim of war, right? Every war has a political aim, and this is legitimate. But when you decide that you're going to end the Hamas power in Gaza, you have to say who's going to rule Gaza in its stead. Now, all of us understand who can rule Gaza instead of Hamas. And this is the PA, you know what that is, the PA? The Palestine Authority in Ramallah. They are dying to rule Gaza. They would love to rule Gaza. They consider it to be part of their country. And it's obvious. But Netanyahu can't let the PA rule Gaza, because the PA, in the eyes of these religious extremists, this is the biggest problem, because they want to found a Palestinian state on the West Bank. And so, no, we're not going to give them any power. So that, no. So the other possibility is, what do these crazy people want, the religious people? Why do I say that they're crazy? They're not crazy in the sense of psychology or psychiatrics, but they're crazy in the sense that because they are so religious, they are cut off from reality. They're making decisions of military affairs, political affairs, life and death affairs based on religious beliefs, not based on real Realpolitik or whatever it's called in German. So anyway, so he can't. So he knows that that these religious people, they want to rule the West Bank. They want to rule Gaza. They want to expel the Arabs from Gaza, and they want to make it into a Jewish settlement in Gaza. And so now Netanyahu can't say this to the world. Okay, my plan for after the war, after destroying Hamas, my plan is to expel the Arabs from the West, from the Gaza Strip, and to make it into Jewish. He can't say that. So he can't say that, which is what the religious people want. He can't say that it's the Palestine Authority in Ramallah. So he doesn't say anything. Now, you understand, this makes the whole war a total failure. We're talking about a war, many soldiers were killed. And of course, Palestinians were killed by the tens of thousands. And the whole war is a failure. Why is it a failure? Because our army goes and captures Jabalia, right? There's a neighborhood in Gaza called Jabalia. Our army captures Jabalia. We look for the terrorists, we look for their weapons, we look for their tunnels, okay? And then the army pulls out. It has some other mission. And what happens when they pull out? Hamas comes back. And then we hear a month later that the army is attacking Jabalia again. And we kill the terrorists, and we find their weapons, and then the army moves on someplace else, and they come back again. The whole war is a big failure because he can't say what's to be after on the day after the war. President Trump, you know that he's not exactly a normal person, right? He's made things terribly worse. I'll say a few words about him. So President Trump, he made his fortune. He didn't make his fortune. His grandfather made the fortune, but he inherited the fortune. But he is in real estate. You understand what real estate is? Okay, everybody?
Immobilien.
Okay, wow, what's it called in German?
Immobilien.
Okay, immovables. Okay, so he's in real estate. He was a real estate man, and so suddenly he says he's got a brilliant idea. I like these brilliant ideas that can't be done. He has a brilliant idea. We're going to take all the Gazans and we're going to send them away, and then we're going to turn the Gaza Strip into the Riviera. So he said that a few times. He even said that yesterday. I heard him say that yesterday again. So you all understand something. The Gazans are not going away. They are more than 2 million people, and they are not moving to New York City, and they're not going to move to Munich, and they're not going to move even to Cairo. They're not going anywhere. The whole thing is crazy. But whenever you put Mr. Netanyahu up against the wall and say, no, what's to be when the war's over? Oh, we have a plan. Mr. Trump's plan. It gave him a way of avoiding answering the question seriously. And he knows that it's nonsense. But he's busy with propaganda. He has to give an answer. So he gives an answer. Mr. Trump gave an answer for what's to be after the war. And it's just like, okay, so now we have a purpose of the war which can't be achieved, which means failure. I want you to know, people, when you go to war and your plan for the war is unrealistic, it means the war in the end is a failure. So we had that, for instance, in the war in Lebanon in 2006, I think it was, that the government made plans for the war in Lebanon, which were unrealistic, and when the war was over, all of us felt, oh, what a failure. And the same thing's true now for the war in Gaza. The war, in the end, in my opinion, in the end, everybody in Israel is going to say the war was a failure, because when you make a plan for a war which is just propaganda, it's going to be a failure. So that's the issue with the day after. He'll never say what it is the day after. He has no plan whatsoever. There is no plan. He's just now fighting a war that has no end, no point to it. So now I want to get into the even worse things. You think this is the worst? There's even worse things. No, I have my juice.
Oh, you have that.
I have the juice. Okay.
I thought it was your glass.
Okay. So now I want to tell you some other things. Everybody depressed already? No? Okay. Okay. I'll do my best now to make you even more depressed. So And the Netanyahu in 2018, he seems like already in the prehistorical period, 2018. But in 2018, Netanyahu.
So we were in Israel. 2018, that's when we were with you.
So in the year 2018, yeah, it's hot, huh? So, okay, in the year 2018, Netanyahu made connection with Qatar. Qatar is Qatar. It's spelled with a Q. In Arabic, it's a Qatar. Qatar. Okay. So he made a deal with Qatar. I'll say it, this is how Europeans say it. He made a deal with Qatar, and in which Qatar will give $30 million every month to Gaza. What's the reason? The reason is humanitarian aid. People in Gaza are very poor. They haven't got what to eat, so every family gets whatever, $10 or whatever, $20, and that's a lot of money in Gaza. And it was meant for humanitarian aid. That was in 2018. At the same time, well, this is a story that I haven't told in a long time, but this is the important story. At the same time, there was a department in the Mossad. Everybody know what the Mossad is? Yeah. Okay, there was a department in the Mossad which we call in Hebrew tziltzal. Now see how good your English is. In English, this is called a harpoon. Harpoon. Okay. So there was an organization in the Mossad called Harpoon, or in Hebrew we call it tziltzal. And what does this organization do? This organization follows the money. So they know where follow the money. They can see where the terrorist organizations are using their money. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, no explanation, Netanyahu had Harpoon closed. Uh-huh. Closed. Why? They say in Yiddish, geh weiß. Go. No, okay. Geh weiß. Okay, go figure this one out. So anyway, it was closed till Tzal. And the money being passed from Qatar to Gaza was in cash. Mm-hmm. A suitcase would come to Israel on an airplane from Qatar. A suitcase would come, and Netanyahu would make sure that this suitcase got into Gaza. And the people who work with Netanyahu, the Shin Bet, you know the Shin Bet? Mm-hmm. And the Mossad, they say, but no, why cash? It should go through the banking system so we can see how they're using the money. Mm-hmm. No, Netanyahu insisted that he's going to go ahead with cash. He had an agreement with Qatar. It's going to be in cash. After a while, our Mossad people or our Shin Bet people, they tell Netanyahu that Hamas is using the money to buy weapons. And Netanyahu insisted to continue. Now he has a lot of power. He's the commander of the Shin Bet, and he's the commander of the Mossad, and he's the commander of the army, and he says, no, we're continuing.
And they knew that even though it was paid in cash?
Yeah, they knew already. Yeah. They knew what was happening with the money, that they were getting weapons. And so in 2021, there were elections in Israel, and we had a miracle. There was a new prime minister, not Netanyahu. It was a government that lasted for just a year and a half, unfortunately. It just lasted for a year and a half. But when this government came into power, they immediately stopped the money from Qatar to Gaza. Mm-hmm. Netanyahu returned to power in the end of 2022. He returned to power. There were new elections, I told you, in November. And he renews it. It's like there's no explanation for it. And I try to explain his logic, assuming now that there is logic here, not just corruption, but his logic is that he wants to weaken the Palestine Authority in Ramallah. And in order to weaken it, he wants to make sure that Hamas is strong. So they can't be one political unit, and they can't demand a Palestinian state. That was his supposed political logic behind it. I don't think so. I think it's corruption. I think he got a payment from Qatar. I don't know, but I think this is now being investigated. So anyway, that was happening, and then suddenly, on the 7th of October, 2023, came this terrible attack, a terrible attack of Hamas. People who saw Netanyahu that day saw him totally gray, totally in shock, not performing at all. He was totally in shock. He didn't expect this at all. He thought that by giving money to Hamas that they would behave themselves. He didn't realize who they are. And it's really strange because Netanyahu has made a career of telling us that he understands terror. And it turns out that he doesn't understand terror, because he is assuming that what Hamas wants is the good life. They want the money coming in to give jobs in Israel and to the poor people to have money. They're interested in having a better life. No, Mr. Netanyahu, you're a person who's supposed to understand terrorism. No, they want to destroy the state of Israel. And even if their people get killed in the fight against Israel, for them it's fine, because a person who dies in the battle against Israel, he's called a shaheed. You know the word shaheed? A shaheed, he goes to heaven. He can talk to Allah in heaven. And so, anyway, he doesn't understand a thing about terrorism apparently, or he's so corrupt. And so this is part of the attack, that he brought money to Hamas, thinking that he's going to buy peace and quiet with this money, not realizing who his enemy is. Now I want to get to what's happening now in Israel. As I told you, this whole...
Why was he elected again?
Why was he elected?
Again.
Netanyahu is a very, very successful politician until now. I think now he's finished. I mean, I don't think he has a chance of ever winning an election again, but he's a very, very successful politician. He has a strong group of Israeli citizens who think he is everything. He is the smartest person. He's the best person. You ask a person who voted for Netanyahu, why did you vote for Netanyahu? He'll tell you, there's nobody else to vote for. Nobody else compares to Netanyahu. That's the answer they give you. Who compares to Netanyahu?
Also, he bought the parties, the religious parties.
Well, yeah, he made a coalition with them by giving them whatever they wanted, yeah. So now I want to give you the latest news, which is, as much as I told you terrible stories, this one is just unbelievable. Man glaubt nicht. So here it is. Netanyahu has an advisor, or I take it back. He has a spokesman, whose job is to explain to the public what's happening with the war. This man's name is Feldstein, Eli Feldstein. And he's working in the Prime Minister's office as a spokesman for the Prime Minister. Now, in order to work in the Prime Minister's office, you have to be tested about your background, about your security, if you're the right person to be exposed to secrets of the state. And Mr. Feldstein did not pass the test. Now, that means that Netanyahu can't give him a salary. No salary. What turns out? It turns out that Mr. Feldstein, who didn't pass the test, so as far as Netanyahu is concerned, he can't work in Netanyahu's office, and he can't be exposed to secrets, but he is working for Netanyahu in Netanyahu's office, and it turns out that he was given a salary. From where? Qatar. So Qatar gave money to an American Jew, I forgot his name, but anyway, an American Jew who is an agent who works for Qatar, and this American Jew gave Feldstein his salary. So we have now Qatar, which is the supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, the supporter of Al-Qaeda, the supporter of Daesh. The Daesh, you don't know the word Daesh. It's called ISIS. ISIS, and they're called in Arabic Daesh. So ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, they're supporting all these terrorist groups, and the same country which supports these terrorist groups is paying a salary to one of the advisors in Netanyahu's office. It's like unbelievable. Everybody sits around the table in Kibbutz Suba, scratching their head, saying, "Where are we living? Like this is so insane."
This is a public information.
What?
Do all the people know that?
Oh yeah, it's the person who gave him the money
Yeah.
was interviewed on Israeli radio, and he said, "This is true. Yeah, I was asked to pay him, so I paid him." So it's.
Every month?
He paid him a salary, and I'm certain it was a nice salary. So for for Qatar, this is peanut. You know the expression peanuts. I wanted to say peanuts. Did they understand the expression? Okay, yeah, it's peanuts for they bribe the second in command of the European Union. They gave her millions of dollars, and she's now in jail, and other people also are in jail. For them, this is peanuts. They're giving a salary to what?
Woher hat Katar das ganze Geld?
Qatar? Why do they have so much money? Qatar, they have natural gas. They got natural gas as we say in Hebrew, in very large quantities. How do you call it? Kamut mischarit. They have a lot of natural gas. They're very, very rich, and they're all the time they're bribing politicians throughout the world. They're also paying the big universities in America a lot of money, so they would teach Middle Eastern studies in their spirit, which means that the support of these terrorist groups. And so now 3 of Netanyahu's advisors in his office are under investigation. One was in Serbia. One was in Serbia when this story broke. And so he hasn't come back to Israel. He knows that he comes back to Israel, he's going to be arrested, and he's going to be put into the police interrogation, so he doesn't come back. But the 2 who are in Israel, they've been arrested and they're under police investigation. And of course the question is, Netanyahu says he doesn't know. Whenever Netanyahu has something very embarrassing, he says he doesn't know about it, he never heard about it. Actually, Mr. Feldstein, who didn't pass the test, but he was the spokesman for Netanyahu, when he was first arrested, Netanyahu said he doesn't even know who this person is. And then on television, they showed pictures of Netanyahu going in a helicopter to Gaza to see our soldiers. And who's sitting next to him? Feldstein, right? But he doesn't know who he is. So in the end, he said, "Oh yes. It's Feldstein. He's a good family, blah 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 blah, all that kind of stuff." I'll tell you something about Netanyahu. It's very, very difficult to catch him telling the truth. It's hard, a tough one. You have to work hard to catch him telling the truth. I don't know if you caught that little joke, but that's how it is. So that's it. We have this terrible crisis. I didn't tell you the whole crisis, but this is what came to my mind. And maybe you want to ask a few questions, and I can tell you. Yeah.
Ich sage es auf Deutsch.
Okay.
Die Bevölkerung in Israel, weiß die all diese Dinge, die du hier erklärst?
So what's she say?
If the people of Israel know everything that you're telling them.
Listen, the people of Israel are divided into 2 camps. Let's call it, everybody calls it left and right. Left and right is no longer relevant in Israel. We have 2 camps in Israel, Bibi camp and anti-Bibi camp. Okay? So in the Bibi camp, they would say about what I'm saying, they would use a Trump phrase, and they would say fake news. And they always say fake news. Netanyahu says fake news, and they say it's news that was fabricated in order to make his government fall. It's all about toppling the government. As if the government falling is a big crime. When Netanyahu is in the opposition, he fights very hard for the government to fall. because he wants new elections, and he wants to be prime minister. But when the other side tries to make his government fall, that's supposed to be some sort of terrible thing. But in any case, they would always say that it's fake news. But and he uses also Trump also says deep state. Do you know what the deep state is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like somebody else is in power that we can't see him.
The enemy from within.
The enemy within, yeah. So Netanyahu all the time says no, it's deep state, and they're trying to topple a government of the right. And but I think now that a large part of the Israeli public understands that some crazy things have been happening in Israel for the last 2 years. I tell you what the crisis. Well, I'll give you another insight into the crisis. Netanyahu. Okay, I don't know how to. You know the word weird in English? Weird. Strange. He's a strange man. He's a strange man. I tell you what. Let me explain to you why he's a strange man. You know, as prime minister, he gets a very, very nice salary. Very nice salary. Now, he doesn't have to spend his money that he earns from the state of Israel. He doesn't have to spend his money on buying shoes or buying clothing. The state gives him whatever he needs, and his wife. Now, he doesn't have to spend any money to pay for rent. The state provides him with housing. Now, when he travels abroad, he goes with his wife abroad all the time, or he used to, until he was wanted by the court in The Hague. But anyway, he travels abroad. He doesn't pay for that. The state pays for it. The airplane, the pilot, everything. The state pays for everything. So he has this gigantic salary in which he doesn't have to spend any of it. Now he likes cigars, and his wife likes champagne, right? And what's the problem, Mr. Netanyahu, that you stick your hand in your pocket and you buy cigars, and you stick your hand in your other pocket and you buy your wife some champagne? What's the problem? He's a strange man, and there's some problem here. So what happens? He has this. He used to have this guest from America. He's a former Israeli. He makes movies in Hollywood. His name is Arnon Mitchen. And when this Arnon Mitchen comes to Israel, he always gets from Netanyahu a message what Netanyahu wants. A shopping list. And this guy comes to Israel with truckloads of champagne and cigars. Now, I want you to know, people, this is a very important point to point out to you. If you work for the state of Israel, whatever, you're in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what does it make a difference? You work for the state of Israel, you're a clerk in the office. If somebody comes to you and gives you a present more than 150 shekel, you have to say, no, thank you, I can't accept it. I can't more than that. So when let's say the American president comes to Israel and he brings Netanyahu a wonderful present, a statue or something like that, it's worth maybe, I don't know, $500, who knows? So Netanyahu, he can't keep it. He has to put it into the state archives, whatever. But this guy, he's getting in present, and nobody understands what is his problem. Why does he do it? So anyway, but this is what he's been doing. And of course, the suspicion is that this is a bribe. He's being bribed for something or other. I know what he was being bribed for. But I don't want to give you all the details. You won't fall asleep at nighttime. But he was being bribed. I think he was being bribed. He's being accused of taking bribes, and so he went now. He's now on trial. He's been in trial now for 5 years. So you have to understand, he's on trial for 5 years. Why does his trial take so long? Because he's prime minister. And as prime minister, he has a lot of power. He can say, well, I can't go to court tomorrow because there's going to be a war in Lebanon or whatever. He has no problem manipulating the court because he's prime minister. He's got a lot of duties. And so this is going on and on and on and on. And and so it's important to Netanyahu. This is now my interpretation. It is important to Netanyahu to stay prime minister forever in order to fight this trial and not to go to jail. Now, I want you to point out something else also. It's very, very important. All the time, this is before the war, all the time the state offers Netanyahu a plea bargain. You know that word in German?
Eine Vereinbarung, also
wo man miteinander verhandelt.
A plea
Einstellung des Verfahrens.
the offering a plea bargain, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Einstellung des Verfahrens.
Einstellung des Verfahrens.
Okay, so all the time they're offering him a plea bargain. So what's the plea bargain? The plea bargain is, Mr. Netanyahu, you're not going to go to jail, but you are going to have to admit that you are guilty, and your political career is finished. Yeah, okay. So he doesn't want to admit that he's guilty, right? So he says no, he doesn't go for the plea bargain, and so he stays in power and uses his power as prime minister to make it difficult to interrogate him, to put him on trial. So he attacks the police department and he attacks the justice system, and now he wants to destroy the Supreme Court. All these things he's doing in order to destroy anybody who can threaten his position. And so this is a very, very sad story, and this is actually the source of all the troubles. He doesn't want any. This is what I mentioned a couple of hours ago to people here. Any normal prime minister, and when I say normal prime minister, even a bad prime minister, any normal prime minister, if he is accused of a crime, he always resigns, and he tells the public on television, I'm innocent, this is not fair what happened to me, and I'm going to go to court, and I'm going to prove my innocence, and then I'll come back and I'll be prime minister again. That's what a normal prime minister does, even a bad prime minister. But Netanyahu, no. He won't admit guilt. He won't go for a plea bargain. He won't go for the bargain. He wants to fight it, and so everything gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. That's it. Questions. As my grandmother used to say, are there any questions? Yeah.
This concept of Netanyahu doesn't have to do nothing with the beginners of the state of Israel. You understand?
Yeah, sure.
It's
Yeah. That's it.
corruption of the vision of Ben Gurion.
Yeah, I would say
other people.
I would say this. Netanyahu. I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. It's a very, very important point to me, and that is Netanyahu is attacking the very identity of the state of Israel. This is the home of the Jewish people, and the state of Israel exists in order to protect the Jewish people, and also, we unfortunately have to go to war every decade or whatever. There's another one. Sometimes 3 times in a decade we have to go to war. And what is the thinking of the state of Israel? Thinking of the state of Israel is, okay, we have a war, so all the boys have to go back to the army. They have to leave your shop or leave your university position. You have to go back to the army, get a weapon, and go to war. And what's the thinking of the state of Israel? The thinking of the state of Israel is the war has to be short as possible, and everybody goes back to the shop or goes back to the university, whatever. Everybody has to go back to what he was doing before. That's the interest of the state of Israel. Now we have a prime minister who doesn't have solidarity with his people. He doesn't care if they get killed. He has to stay prime minister. That's the most important thing. And he doesn't want the war to end. As long as the war is going on, as long as there's war, it doesn't end, he doesn't have to answer any questions. All the time they ask him, Mr. Netanyahu, why don't you make a committee of inquiry? You know, someone say that in German? Committee of inquiry. Okay, why don't you make a committee of inquiry to investigate how this happened, this terrible war? How were we surprised? After every such war, there's always a committee of inquiry. Now suddenly, what does Netanyahu say? Inquiry after the war. But he has control. He has control of the war not ending. And so he's now fighting the very essence of Ben Gurion, the very essence of the state of Israel. No solidarity with the Jewish people, and secondly, no returning our boys back to their former routine. Yeah, back to their lives. Listen, the demonstration on Sunday. So I mean, I don't really understand German, but the person was speaking, and the little I understood was that we want to return the hostages, but no politics. Right? That's what he said. That's the little that I understood. Okay. So I understand him. I understand he's in a position. He wants everybody to come, and if he takes a political position, some won't come. So he's very careful. But I have to say my opinion about this, if you don't mind, that politics are part of the story, and to return our hostages, Netanyahu has to leave his position as Prime Minister of Israel. As long as he is, I'll say this this is the most important point that I'm bringing up to you. As long as Netanyahu is the Prime Minister of Israel, no problem can be solved. Because he's not fighting for the state of Israel. He's fighting for staying Prime Minister.
Bärbel?
I wanted to say, obviously, the fact that he's doing the task for the religion Zionists combines with his interest, because continuing the war, he stays Prime Minister, and the other are okay, they are saying you are doing the things good.
Yeah.
Is this perhaps...
That's right. Yeah. They both have an interest in continuing the war. He doesn't want to end the war.
What would you say, what would have been the right way to act after the 7th of October? After the massacre?
Okay. It's a good question.
Because if you only would have made a Waffenstillstand,
Stopping
ceasefire from the beginning, and the hostages would come back, and lots of prisoners would come to West Jordanland and Gaza Strip, then Hamas would have been there.
So
it could the massacre could happen again and again.
And that's what Netanyahu explains. But what should have been done? What should have been done is this: that Israel on the 8th of October, the 9th of October, should have told Hamas that we want to negotiate with them in order to return our hostages. That should have been number one, to return the hostages. And once the hostages were back, then he has the option of going to war. Now, obviously, they wouldn't return our hostages and to let us go to war, but they would return the hostages, and we would have to wait for an opportunity that they make some mistake, whatever, then go to war. So it was obvious, hostages first, and then we can fight. But to fight them when they have our hostages, that is insanity. Insanity. But you understand, he's running the country with insanity because he's not dealing with the interests of the state. He's with his own interests. And that's why the crisis is so unbelievable. You cannot believe you have a prime minister that your interest is not his first priority. His first priority is himself.
Many people say we as Israel, as the state of Israel, we cannot negotiate with Hamas because then we would recognize them as a real
entity.
Partner.
Yeah. But they have our people, and you understand. They have our people, and so this to be cold and say, well, our people can die, but we're not going to recognize Hamas. That's crazy. The most important thing was, those two little babies. It's such a tragedy. A 9-month-old baby and his older brother, 2 years old, and why didn't he return them? In the end, the Hamas killed them, and their mother. It's just unbelievable.
Would it be a realistic goal to destroy the Hamas?
No, it's not realistic at all. It's not real. It can't be done. It can't be done. It's all. When he says the purpose of the war is to destroy Hamas and to return the hostages, it's a lie, but it's a lie meant for his public. His public accepts it, and even the people today who support his renewing the war, they say yes. The purpose of the war is to destroy Hamas. And what about the hostages? So they have to give you an answer. what about the hostages? And the answer is, yes, the war will release them. And that is a lie. That is a lie, and it's part of the state of Israel now for a year and a half, this gigantic lie, that the hostages will return because of the war. We returned from captivity, we returned 8 people by force. 8 people. 8. Now, through a deal, through negotiations, we released, more than 100 already. 8 by force. So it's nonsense. It's not going to happen. Yeah, Ken, you're disappointed in Netanyahu.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a very bad man.
Very, very disappointed.
Yes.
I'm always asking me how the religious Jews are thinking. You said there are very, very religious Jews, fundamentalists, I think.
Religious Zionists.
Zionists, in my eyes, fundamentalists. And
That's 3 groups.
then the Reformed and the thinking Jews. What are they say? You understand? Those
Like people,
who are believers, but who are
okay, no, you have
reasonable religion.
listen, you have some religious Jews who are against Netanyahu. But I want to tell you something which is very, very painful for me, because I go to the demonstrations all the time, sometimes 4 times a week in demonstrations. And my eyes are open. I want to see how many religious Jews are in the audience. Very, very, very few. Very, very few. And I don't have an explanation for it. It's very, very sad. But that's the way it is. The religious Jews support this government. Some don't. There are some religious Jews who don't support the government, just as there are intellectual, non-religious Jews, people who finished university, very, very intelligent people, who support the government. There are such people. But by and large, the religious community and the North African Jews they support this government. Yeah.
And what about the Likud party?
Yeah.
Because as I always knew that formerly Likud was a normal party. With
democratic.
Politicians, and why don't they see with this man on the top, we cannot succeed in anything? Why are they following him?
And I'll answer you by this way. There is not a single person in the Likud party, in the Knesset or in the government, who says, Mr. Netanyahu, I believe you're making a mistake. No one.
But why?
Yeah,
Why?
I have to say that he changed the party.
Yeah, he changed
Isn't
it.
successful at all.
Yeah.
He
Okay.
changed everybody. He changed. The normal people that you remember, you think about, they got fed up with Netanyahu. They're angry at him, so they left. And for everyone who left, he took 2 new ones, like Ben Gvir and other crazy ones.
They're not in the Likud, but
They're not in Likud,
but people like that.
Okay.
Everything that's
Okay.
left from the Likud is only the name.
Maybe I'll tell you something. I'm always afraid of giving too many details of what's happening because it's such a big story. But I'll just give you one little trick that you should be aware of. The Likud, how do they choose their members of Knesset? So you, the private citizen, you have to sign up as a member of Likud and pay a little bit of money. Okay. Now, then you have people who want to be in the Knesset. And so they campaign, and those who paid money to be part of the Likud party vote on these people. Now you have religious Jews in Israel who say, in order for us to advance our ideas, we should join the Likud party and become Knesset members from the Likud. So you have these people who, they don't belong in the Likud.
They undermine it.
They don't really belong to Likud as far as ideology. They belong to the religious Zionism. But they register as Likud members, and people like them sign up to vote, And these people get voted into the Knesset from the Likud. Now, when I watch TV, and there's a Likud member of Knesset who's making a speech or making some sort of statement to the public, you see, he's got a kippah on his head. It's not the Likud public. It's another public. And you have many. You have Buaron, and you have Kar'i, and you have Saada, and there's so many of them in the Likud party that are not really Likud people. But
I have another question on the feeling of security of the Jewish people.
Okay.
After
Yeah.
on October 7th,
Yeah.
this feeling
Yeah.
has changed.
Yeah, sure, it's changed. Listen, the people along the border of Israel, they are in our eyes heroes, right? And they're keeping the land of Israel in our hands by living on the border and watching the border. And the state of Israel is supposed to have the army there to help them, right? And they feel betrayed. And you have lots of people who used to live in Kibbutz Be'eri, Kibbutz Nachal Oz, Kibbutz Zikim, who say, no, I can't return to the kibbutz now after the war, because I'm afraid that this will happen again. And the same thing is true for the northern borders. So you have a population in Israel that is still shaken by
Is it only that part of Israel? I'm thinking about the whole Jewish people.
No, I listen. And Kibbutz Suba, I think people feel secure. They don't feel endangered at all. But you have communities that are not far from the border that the people are saying, no, we're going to move to Tel Aviv and not live on the border anymore.
So
and
the promise of the state of Israel was that's the only place in the world where we are safe.
Yeah.
So now IDF isn't capable of securing the state of Israel, securing the people of the Jewish people. So I'm thinking more globally in the sense of this promise.
Okay, so listen. It'll take time, but the sense of security will be returned eventually. Eventually, it's the same. They knock on wood. Eventually, we're going to return to be a normal country again. I don't know how soon, but as soon as Netanyahu is not in power, and there'll be new elections, we'll be back to normal. Politicians who care about the Jewish people, will care about the interests of the state of Israel. And as the years go by, the sense of security will be restored. But you're right, though. It's a big blow to our sense of security.
And could you see the war right now as part of this motivation to give back the feeling of security? So in the sense of, okay, we are so powerful and Hamas is fearing us again because we bombed the whole Gaza Strip and they now again know what the costs will be in the future, so don't attack Israel.
No. You're speaking for the Arabs. They wouldn't attack Israel because they were bombed by us.
No, yeah, in the sense of we are so powerful.
Yeah,
it costs too much to attack Israel.
Okay, so I have to.
For Hamas,
Nothing
is too expensive. Nothing.
Okay, so
They don't care.
yeah, okay. I answered in the same spirit as Ribi. The Hamas, their motivation is not your motivation. It's not your motivation. Their motivation is religious. And when they have an opportunity to kill Jews, they will do it. And they'll never say, oh, how are the Jews going to react? Are they going to bomb Gaza again? That's not a consideration. It's a different planet. The Arabs are very, very religious people. Very religious people.
But even if the cost would be that Hamas is done.
Hamas can't be finished. That's a fable. That's wishful thinking. They won't disappear. Hamas is very popular.
They're part of the Muslim Brotherhood.
They're very popular, but they're very popular. You have to understand. There were elections there was once elections in the Palestine Authority, and the Americans were insisting that they have elections. Everybody warned the Americans, it's stupid, don't have elections in the Palestinian territories because you don't know what the results are going to be. But the Americans insisted. President Carter was the one who watched the elections in the West Bank. And much to everybody's surprise, Hamas got 70%. They're very, 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 very popular. And that's it. That's part of our reality.
But
Yeah.
what's the solution with the Palestinians?
Oh, gee. Our first problem is what to do about Netanyahu.
Yes,
What about Netanyahu?
Yes, but at the end, the problem remains.
No, I must interrupt.
Sure.
We'll need to have dinner because some have to
Yeah,
go back to Augsburg.
no problem.